Welcome and thank you for standing by. As a quick reminder, today's call is being recorded. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. I would now like to turn today's meeting over to your host, Ms. Michelle Dickens. Thank you. You may begin.
Thanks so much. Hello and welcome to the Community Development Financial Institution Fund's CDFI Certification Presentation, where we will present an overview of the proposed revisions and modifications to the CDFI Certification Application. This review is designed to assist you with the review of the application published in the Federal Register and available for comment. I am your guide, Michelle Dickens, the Associate Program Manager responsible for overseeing the Community Development Entity and Community Development Financial Institution certification process. The CDFI Fund appreciates your interest and welcomes your comments. The CDFI Fund is soliciting public comment on a revised CDFI certification application. Changes to the CDFI certification policies and procedures as reflected in the application were informed by information collected during a public input process. The following presentation describes the requirements of CDFI certification, the CDFI Fund's review of the CDFI certification policy, proposed revisions to the CDFI certification application, and information on how to submit comments to the CDFI Fund. So let's get started. Following the roadmap you see on your screen, we will make the following stops along the way. Stop number 1, about CDFI Fund and Community Development Financial Institutions. Stop number 2, CDFI certification and the CDFI Fund's review of certification policy. Stop number 3, the CDFI certification application in brief. Stop number 4, changes to the CDFI Fund certification application, section by section. And the fourth and final stop, request for public comment and the CDFI certification application changes. This recorded webinar will allow you the flexibility to skip, review, or pause sections for your convenience. Now let's move on to our first stop. The CDFI Fund's mission is to expand economic opportunity for underserved people and communities by supporting the growth and capacity of a national network of community development lenders, investors, and financial service providers. Our lofty vision is an America in which all people and communities have access to the investment capital and financial services they need in order to prosper. We are honored to administer 6 separate programs authorized through these 4 statutes listed on the screen. The Regal Community Development and Regulatory Improvement Act of 1994 governs the Bank Enterprise Award Program, Community Development Financial Institutions Program, Native American and CDFI Assistance Program. The Community Renewal Tax Relief Act of 2000 governs the New Market Tax Credit Program. The Housing and Economic Recovery Act of 2008 governs the Capital Magnet Fund Program, and the Small Business Jobs Act of 2010 governs the Bond Guarantee Program. CDFIs are community-based, mission-driven organizations that help move the CDFI Fund's mission forward. The types of CDFIs include banks, credit unions, loan funds, and venture capital funds. Next up, CDFI certification and the CDFI Fund's review of certification policies. As previously mentioned, the CDFI Fund is responsible for certifying organizations as community development financial institutions granted to us by the Regal Act. CDFI certification is the doorway to most of the CDFI fund programs, and the fund verifies that an organization meets the certification requirements through a series of validations and tests in the certification application. Data and information is collected through a standardized application form that is submitted through the fund's Award Management Information System, and annually certified CDFIs must demonstrate that they continue to meet the certification requirements and report on their yearly lending and investment activity. Through the application process, an applicant must be able to demonstrate that it meets each of the following requirements: be a legal entity at the time of certification application, have a primary mission of promoting community development, be a financing entity, primarily serve one or more target markets, provide development services in conjunction with its financing activities, maintain accountability to its defined target market, and be a non-government entity and not under control as a government entity. Now, this criteria excludes tribal governments. Over the past 2 decades, certified CDFIs have evolved in scope, scale, and sophistication. Certified CDFIs have grown from 196 distinct organizations in 1997 to nearly 1,100 today. Assets of certified CDFIs now total almost $160 billion. CDFIs are comprised of a mix of regulated financial institutions, loan funds, and venture capital funds. CDFI certification is a qualifier for other federal, state, and local governments and private sector programs and benefits. CDFI financial products and financial services have expanded, including the use of technology to increase their market research. In an effort to be more responsive to the evolving nature of the CDFI industry and to protect government resources, in 2016, the CDFI Fund undertook a major effort to review the current certification policies. In 2017, the CDFI Fund sought comments on the current certification policies and procedures. We received an overwhelming response from the public, 28 letters containing well over 200 pages of comments. From 2017 to 2019, the CDFI Fund thoughtfully developed a revised certification application that has now been released to the public for review and comment. In developing the revised certification application, the CDFI Fund maintains 5 policy objectives. Continue to foster a diversity of CDFI types, activities, and geographies. Support the growth and reach of CDFIs, especially as it relates to their ability to innovate and take advantage of new technologies. Protect the CDFI brand. Minimize burden on CDFIs while improving data quality and collection methods, and to promote efficiency for CDFI Fund staff in rendering CDFI certification determinations. Next up, the CDFI certification application in brief. You will find that the CDFI certification application has been arranged around the certification requirements. Each section will provide for the collection of information that will be used to validate an applicant's ability to meet each criteria. I will now walk you through each section of the application at a very high level. You can read along on the slides before you. The Basic Information section collects general information about the CDFI certification applicant and any affiliates that must be reviewed in connection with any of the CDFI certification requirements. This information includes financing entity type, organization contacts, fiscal year, and affiliates. The Legal Entity section collects information that verifies an applicant is duly organized and validly exists under the laws of the jurisdiction in which it is incorporated or established. For the Primary Mission section, a certified CDFI must have a primary mission of promoting community development. Information collected will be used to evaluate if an applicant's activities are purposefully directed towards improving the social and economic conditions of underserved people and or residents of economically distressed communities. The Financing Entity section collects and verifies information that demonstrates an applicant's predominant business activity is the provision of products and or financial services. Target market. The target market section collects information that demonstrates that at least 60% of an applicant's financing activity is to eligible target markets. That's either an investment area or a targeted population. For the accountability section, applicants must provide information demonstrating that they are maintaining accountability to their target market, either the residents of the investment area and members of a target population. And that's the representation on their governing board and or advisory board. For the development services section, an applicant must demonstrate that it provides development services that are in conjunction with and connected to the financial products it provides. The application verifies that the development services are provided. Non-government entity section. A CDFI cannot be an agency or instrumentality of the United States, any state or political subdivision. The application verifies that the applicant is not a non-government entity. And finally, organizations that designate themselves as a CDFI do so by verifying that at least 50% of their activity is directed towards a native community in addition to the aforementioned requirements. This designation allows them eligibility to apply for assistance under the NACA program. We are now at our fourth stop on the roadmap, changes to the CDFI certification application section by section. At this stop, we will delve a little bit deeper into the details of each certification application section. I will highlight the current policy and identify changes in which you should be aware. This may be where you want to take note of changes that may impact your organization or even just places where you want to be reminded to consider or provide comments. Each application criteria section begins with some general information or guidance. It may include details about special provisions in meeting the certification criteria. Specific data points are identified in a 3-column table. From left to right, the column headings are section, question or purpose of data field, and response. And before I begin, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that the development of the CDFI certification application is intended to be dynamic in nature in the AMIS environment, which means that there will be some data that will auto-populate in other sections of the application and or allow for subsections to be visible or hidden based on the data that's provided. This will also assist in reducing applicant burden. So please keep that in mind when you are reviewing this document and review the document in order. One last thing for you to remember is that new applicants and currently certified CDFIs will all need to comply with proposed changes. Okay, the basic information section. Recall the brief description during the previous roadmap stop. The basic information section collects general information about the applicant and relevant affiliates. You will need to ensure that all pre-populated data is accurate and complete. To review this section of the application, we did not find the review of the application did not necessitate any substantial revision or policy changes. You should note, however, that non-regulated entities will now need to be required to submit relevant affiliate information in the basic information section. Affiliate is defined in our regulations as any company or entity that controls or is controlled by or under common control with another company. The legal entity criterion. An applicant must be duly organized and validly exist under the laws in which it is incorporated or established as of the date of the application submission. There are no meaningful policy changes in this section. We will continue to require the submission of appropriate legal documentation. Primary mission criteria. The statute dictates that a CDFI must have a primary mission of promoting community development. The CDFI regulations require the primary mission to be demonstrated by purposefully directing activities towards improving the social and or economic conditions of underserved people and or residents of economically distressed communities. Currently, the CDFI Fund accepts board-approved organizational documents and a narrative regarding the primary mission and the description of the financial products or financial services that are offered. A special provision is granted to credit unions that have received a low-income designation from the National Credit Union Administration. As you can see on this slide, there are significant changes to the policies guiding the primary mission criterion. The CDFI Fund is a brand unto itself, and it is important for us to protect it. The CDFI Fund proposes to strengthen the primary mission test by examining the extent to which an applicant's financial products and or financial services align with the primary mission and will evaluate strategies, policies, and practices related to the products and or services offered by the applicant. Applicants will be required to attest to and answer questions to determine adherence to mission-related principles. This includes documenting mission. The applicant must demonstrate that it has an acceptable community development mission in place for at least the 12 months prior to the submission of the CDFI application. Community development strategy. The applicant must demonstrate it has an acceptable community development strategy such that products or services offered support community development objectives for underserved populations and economically distressed communities. Responsible financing practices. Demonstrate that its financial services or financial products do not harm consumers. Financial products should be affordable and based on the borrower's ability to repay. And CDFI should practice transparency, fair collection, and compliance with federal, state, and local laws and regulations. Practices that do not align with these principles may disqualify an applicant for certification as a CDFI. Affiliates, parent entity of all CDFI applicants and affiliates that provide financial products and or financial services will now be required to demonstrate a community development primary mission, thereby extending an existing rule that previously only applied to depository institutions. I'll pause and ask, did you get all that? Remember, you can pause this webinar and rewind the presentation at your convenience. Financing entity criterion. The CDFI regulations require that a CDFI shall be an entity whose predominant business activity is the provision in arm's length transactions of financial products and or financial services. The existing policy allows for insured depository institutions, depository institution holding companies, and credit unions with federal insurance to automatically meet the financing entity criterion. Non-regulated entities and regulated entities that do not have federal insurance must demonstrate that they engage in the direct financing activities per the regulations and as reflected in their financial statements and other documents. Similarly, it must dedicate a predominance of their business assets and staff time to such financing activities. The CDFI is proposing the following policy changes for the financing entity criterion. New applicants absolutely must have a minimum of 12 months of financial products and or financial service activity prior to the submission of a CDFI certification application. Allow entities that are spun off from other entities that offered eligible financial products or financial services to apply for CDFI certification with less than the 12 months of providing financial products or financial services activity, but only if the transactions were transferred to and will continue under the new entity. And the proposed policy changes will also allow assets related to and staff time spent on loans purchased from entities that are not certified CDFIs but were directed to an applicant's target market to count as assets and staff times devoted to financing. The target market criterion. As per the statute, a CDFI must serve an investment area or targeted population, which is further defined by regulations as a CDFI target market. Target markets may be an investment area which must meet at least one economic distress criteria based on poverty, income, unemployment, or population decline. A low-income targeted population, which is characterized as individuals with median family income not greater than 80% of the area or state median family income, and an other targeted population, which are characteristics of a group of people that demonstrate the lack of access to capital and or financial products or services. Currently, the target market requirement is met by the following existing policy. Applicants must demonstrate that it serves a target market by designating the investment area and or targeted population within a discrete geographic area. This is depicted in the CDFI Fund's mapping system and described narratively within the current application. A CDFI must direct at least 60% in both number and dollar amount of transaction of all of their eligible financial products to one or more eligible target market. However, if an organization fails to meet either the number or the dollar amount threshold, an exception may be provided based on justification that is satisfactory to the CDFI Fund. The CDFI Fund's regulation also allows for the use of financial services to meet target market. However, the CDFI fund had not had a mechanism in place to apply financial services activity to the 60% threshold target market test. Therefore, financial services is not currently allowed to be used to meet the target market test. I think the long-awaited policy changes to the target market criteria are as follows. Eliminate the geographic boundaries and mapping requirement for most target markets, but continue to allow for the creation of customized investment areas that consist of both qualified and non-qualified census tracts as per the current regulations. We intend to operationalize the use of financial services to meet the target market requirement so that a regulated institution applicant can meet the target market test if at least 60% of its financial services depository accounts and 50% of its financial products are directed to a target market, at least one or more target markets, that should be. For new CDFI certification applicants, financial products and, if elected, financial services activities will be measured over the most recently completed 12-month period. The time frame could span fiscal year ends. For existing CDFIs, target market compliance will be assessed based on a 3-year average through the last day of their most recently completed fiscal year end of financial products closed and, if elected, financial services accounts. Applicants must meet the relevant financial product activity threshold without exception in both number and dollar amount of such activity. For new applicants, the CDFI fund will no longer entertain a justification for not meeting the threshold. Remember, you can pause, rewind, or stop the presentation at your convenience before I begin discussing the accountability criterion. The accountability criterion. Per the statute, a CDFI must maintain representation on its governing board or otherwise accountability to residents of its investment area or targeted population. The existing policy dictates that target market representation be met through a governing board and or one or more advisory boards. Board members must reside, work in, or represent the target market. Proportions of required accountable board member vary based on the target market type and geographic scope. A CDFI with multiple target markets currently must meet the accountability test for each target market it serves separately. And here are the policy changes proposed by the CDFI fund for the accountability criterion. Remove the geographic boundaries connected to the source of the board member's accountability to conform with the removal of the geographic boundaries for the target market section as previously discussed. Set a clear and transparent board member percentage. This is where you might want to pay a little bit close attention. Applicants with formally established governing boards must do the following. Demonstrate that at least one governing board member is accountable to each proposed target market component and at least 33% of the governing board is accountable to the proposed target market overall. Demonstrate that at least one advisory board member is accountable to each proposed target market component, and 60% of the advisory board is accountable to the proposed target market overall. At least 20% of the governing board members are accountable to the proposed target market with no specific representation required, and at least one governing board member has a seat on the advisory board. Applicants without a formally established governing board must demonstrate that at least one advisory board member is accountable to each proposed target market component, at least 80% of the advisory board members are accountable to the proposed target market overall, and at least one partner, owner, management leader, depending on your organization's structure, has a seat on the advisory board or boards. I will now move on to the development services criterion. As per the statute, the CDFI must provide development services in conjunction with equity investment or loans directly or through subsidiary or affiliate. To meet this test, and per the regulations, a CDFI directly through an affiliate or through a contract with another provider must have a track record of providing development services in conjunction with its financial products and or financial services. Currently, development services are activities undertaken by the CDFI, its affiliate, or contractor that promote community development and prepare or assist current or potential borrowers or investees to use the CDFI financial products or financial services. The CDFI fund is not proposing policy changes to the development services section of the CDFI certification application. The non-government entity criteria. Per the statute, the CDFI shall not be an agency or instrumentality of the United States or any state or political subdivision of a state. Existing policy allows for an entity that is created by or that receives substantial assistance from one or more government entity to be certified as a CDFI, providing that it is not controlled by such entity and maintains independent decision-making powers over its own activities. Applicants must answer a series of questions that are designed to reveal issues or circumstances that may prevent an entity from meeting this criteria. The CDFI fund, again, is not proposing any policy changes to the non-government entity section of the certification application. And this slide concludes the review of the specific CDFI certification application requirements. Next, I will briefly review the Native American CDFI designation connection to the application. The CDFI fund administers the Native American CDFI Assistance Program, as previously mentioned. While it is not defined in the statute, the CDFI fund allows entities that serve Native communities to self-designate as Native American CDFIs and apply for financial assistance and technical assistance through the NACA program. The current policy is specific to and primarily serves a Native community. Where primarily serves is defined as 50% or more of an applicant's activity, and Native community is defined as Native American, Native Alaskan, and or Native Hawaiian. The policy changes related to Native American CDFI designation are as follows. The Native American CDFI designation will conform to the revised CDFI certification changes previously mentioned in the aforementioned slides. The applicant must demonstrate representation of a Native community through one of two options, keeping in mind the definition from the previous slide. If the applicant has a formal governing board, at least 33% of the governing board members must be members of a Native community population or resident of a Native community geography, and at least 50% of such representatives are members of a Native community population. If the applicant is using an advisory board and the governing board, at least 60% of the advisory board are members of a Native community population or resident of a Native community geography. At least 50% of representatives, advisory board members are members of a Native community population. At least 20% of the governing board members are members of the Native community population or residents of the Native community geography. And at least one governing board member has a seat on the advisory board. Lastly, in lieu of self-designating, applicants must demonstrate they primarily serve Native communities as evidenced by at least 50% of their financial products, financial services, has been directed to one or more Native communities during the most recently completed 12-month period before submitting the application. Okay, we are very close to the end of this journey down the CDFI Fund roadmap to the certification application changes. I would be remiss in not identifying changes to reporting practices to ensure that new certification application and currently certified CDFIs can demonstrate that they are meeting the certification requirements. On an annual basis, CDFIs are going to be continuing to submit an annual certification and data collection report, which allows the CDFI Fund to assess certified CDFI's ongoing compliance with certification requirements. The CDFI, the CDFI Fund has issued a separate request for public comment on proposed changes to the ACR. Some of the changes are aligned to the changes proposed in the CDFI certification application, and you are also encouraged to review the ACR request for public comment. The certification transaction level report is a newly proposed requirement for CDFI certification applicants, and those certified CDFIs that are non-awardees are therefore not required to submit a transaction level report. The CTLR, the transaction level report for certification, would require transactional reporting of new originations for most recently completed fiscal year by the certification applicant and certified CDFIs that are not financial assistance award recipients. The CTLR provides a method for evaluating the extent to which a CDFI serves distressed areas and underserved populations. The CDFI Fund has issued a separate request for public comment on the proposed CTLR and will support both the revised certification application and the annual certification report. Members of the public are encouraged to review and comment on both. The last stop on the CDFI certification application presentation roadmap is the request for public comment on CDFI certification application changes. By now you have heard and completely understand the proposed changes to the CDFI certification application. So what are your next steps? Go to the CDFI Fund's website to review the request for public comment as published in the Federal Register along with the associated documents and related information. The web address is www.cdfifund.gov. After you've digested the documents, you may submit comments to Tanya McGinnis, Program Manager for the Certification Compliance Monitoring and Evaluation Business Unit, via email at ccme@cdfi.tres.gov. The Office of Management and Budget will issue an additional request for comment that will concur separately and subsequent to the Treasury Department's request for public comment. And there you have it. The CDFI Fund continues to appreciate the hard work done by CDFIs across the country. And once again, my name is Michelle Dickens. I thank you for listening and allowing me to guide you on this tour of the CDFI certification application changes. It has been my pleasure to serve you. Have a great day.